Ellie and the voicemail that arrived after closing. A sleep story by Sleep After Midnight. Ellie Monroe locked the front door of the records office at exactly 6:03 p.m. She checked the time twice, out of habit rather than necessity. The building had been closing at 6 sharp for decades, and the habit had outlasted several supervisors, 2 renovations, and most of the staff who once filled its cubicles during the day. Now, Ellie was usually the last one out. She worked for the city's Department of Public Records, a job that sounded more official than it felt. Most days were spent digitizing paper files that no one requested anymore, cross-referencing databases that rarely disagreed, and answering the occasional phone call from someone looking for a permit issued long before Ellie had been born. She liked the predictability. It made the quiet feel earned. The building sat 3 blocks from the courthouse, tucked between a law office and a parking structure. After hours, the street emptied quickly. By the time Ellie stepped outside, the late evening air had already cooled, carrying the faint echo of traffic from farther downtown. She pulled her coat tighter and started toward the bus stop. Halfway there, her phone vibrated, a voicemail notification. Ellie frowned. The records office phone number wasn't public-facing anymore. It routed through an automated system that directed callers to online forms. Very few people even tried calling after hours. She stopped walking and checked the notification. Voicemail received, 6:01 p.m. That was odd. She hadn't heard the phone ring. Ellie opened the voicemail. There was a brief pause, then the sound of a chair shifting, paper moving, someone clearing their throat. Then a voice. "Hello," the man said calmly. "I believe I've missed you." Ellie's steps slowed. The voice wasn't distressed, it wasn't urgent. It sounded patient, measured. "I was told this office keeps records of unresolved matters," the voice continued. "I'd like to confirm whether mine is still open." There was another pause. "I'll try again tomorrow," he said. "But if you receive this, I appreciate you listening." That's exactly where she'd left it. No missed calls, no blinking indicator light. Ellie checked the call log on the system. Nothing. No incoming calls after 5:12 p.m. She leaned back slightly in her chair. This wasn't alarming, it was administrative, which somehow made it stranger. She replayed the voicemail. The man's voice was clearer now that she was listening through the office phone speaker. Older, perhaps? Not elderly, but careful with his words, as if he had rehearsed the message once or twice before leaving it. "I was told this office keeps records of unresolved matters." Ellie frowned. That wasn't wrong. But it wasn't something the public usually said out loud. She logged into the records database, typed "unresolved" into the search field. Thousands of entries appeared, cases without final documentation, permits never closed out, files transferred between departments and never marked complete. The city had been built on unfinished paperwork. Ellie smiled faintly at the thought. Then she noticed something else. A new entry had appeared at the top of the list, time stamped 6:01 p.m. Status, pending acknowledgement, no name attached. Ellie clicked into the file. The details were minimal, no address, no case number, no department assignment, just a single line under notes. "Caller believes matter still open, awaiting confirmation." Ellie felt a quiet stillness settle around her. Not fear, attention. She checked the system history. The entry had been created from an internal terminal, her terminal. At 6:01 p.m., Ellie looked at the clock on the wall. 6:19. She had been locking the door at 6:03. She had not been at her desk. She was certain of that. Ellie closed the file, then reopened it. The entry remained. Patient, waiting. She logged out of the system and turned off the lights. As she stepped back outside, the street felt unchanged. Cars passed in the distance. A pedestrian crossed at the corner. Everything continued as it should. Ellie walked to the bus stop, phone still warm in her hand. She didn't delete the voicemail. Some things, she sensed, weren't meant to be erased before they were understood. Ellie returned to the records office the next evening. The day had been ordinary. The bus had been on time. Coffee had been lukewarm. Paperwork had stacked neatly on her desk. Still her mind lingered on the voicemail, on the entry that appeared in the system at 6:01 p.m. It was not fear that drew her back. It was curiosity. She entered the lobby, turning on the lights slowly. The faint hum of the air system filled the empty building. Ellie moved toward her desk, noticing that the clock read 5:58 p.m., 3 minutes before the timestamp of the mysterious voicemail entry. She considered sitting at her terminal and waiting. Then she did. At exactly 6:01 p.m., the phone on her desk lit up with a soft chime. Her fingers hovered over the receiver. She picked it up carefully. No dial tone, no static. Then softly, the voice spoke again. "Hello, I hope you are here." It was the same voice as the night before, calm, precise, older, deliberate. "I called yesterday. I don't think you heard me. I want to confirm. The matter is still open." Ellie's eyes widened slightly. This was impossible. The building's phone lines had been routed digitally. After hours, no external calls reached the desk. No one should have been able to leave a voicemail directly into her terminal. Yet here it was. She typed quickly into the system, searching for the entry. 6:01 p.m., pending acknowledgement, exactly where it had been yesterday. She glanced at the clock again, 6:03 p.m. She realized the entry had not yet moved or changed. It waited patiently, like someone breathing behind the numbers. Curiosity overcame caution. Ellie left the terminal unlocked and stepped toward the door, wanting to check the office itself. The room was empty. The lights of the office reflected on polished floors. The city outside was quiet. Even the hum of distant traffic felt slowed. She returned to her desk. The phone was silent. The voicemail icon blinked softly. At 6:07 p.m., the phone vibrated with a new notification. This time, a text message appeared on her desk terminal. Sender unknown. Message: "Thank you for noticing." Ellie leaned back. Her heart was calm, not racing. She realized this wasn't a prank. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. And it was quiet. She thought back to all the people who had visited the office over the years, people waiting for answers, people standing at counters wondering if their paperwork mattered, people whose lives were measured in numbers and files and signatures. Perhaps some of them never left. The lights in the lobby dimmed slightly as if acknowledging her thought. Ellie typed into the system, acknowledgement logged, matter noted, follow-up pending. The entry accepted it immediately. She closed the file. For the rest of the night, Ellie monitored the system. Nothing else appeared. No calls, no messages, only the quiet hum of fluorescent lights, and the persistent thought that somewhere, someone, or something was aware of the acknowledgement. The following night, Ellie prepared herself. She arrived early, turned on the lights, checked the system, and waited at her terminal. Exactly at 6:01 p.m., the phone rang again. She answered calmly. "Hello," the familiar voice spoke. "I wanted to confirm you are paying attention." Ellie nodded slowly, even though the voice couldn't see her. "I am," she replied. From that moment, Ellie realized her role was not to solve a mystery. Not yet. Her job was simpler. She was to notice, to log, to acknowledge, and to do so carefully, thoughtfully, with attention. Because some matters were never meant to be resolved. They were meant to be witnessed. Ellie leaned back in her chair, listening to the quiet building. The night stretched ahead, still and patient. And she understood finally that her shift was no longer just work. It was keeping the balance between what existed and what needed recognition to continue existing. Ellie arrived at the office that night earlier than usual. She had begun to notice patterns. The voicemails always arrived at 6:01 p.m. The system entries mirrored them, and the messages were always calm, patient, and precise. She made coffee, organized her desk, and waited. At exactly 6:01, the phone chimed softly. "Hello?" the voice said, calm, deliberate. "I wanted to thank you for noticing," it added. Ellie leaned back. She had realized that the system wasn't malfunctioning. It was interacting with her awareness. Someone, or something, was relying on her to acknowledge matters that existed outside ordinary procedures. Over the next hour, Ellie monitored the terminal closely. More entries appeared, all brief, a pending acknowledgement, a note that someone had arrived, or a subtle confirmation that something existed and needed recognition. She responded to each, carefully logging them. Each entry disappeared after she acknowledged it. She realized the office was not just a place to store records. It was a quiet space for unfinished matters, a place where unresolved things waited for someone to notice them. Ellie thought about the man's voice. She would never see him, and he might not exist in the conventional sense. But his messages were always polite, measured, patient. The purpose was not communication, but acknowledgement. The night stretched on in its usual rhythm, soft lights, the hum of ventilation, distant city noises. Ellie logged each incoming entry with meticulous care. By 11:59 p.m., the office was quiet again. No voicemails, no messages, only the gentle awareness that she had completed her role. Weeks passed. The pattern continued. Ellie never rushed. She never panicked. She discovered a kind of calm pride in knowing that her acknowledgement allowed something unseen to exist, even if only briefly. The building, the system, and the voicemails operated in perfect quiet. It was as though they waited for her to arrive, to pay attention, and to let them pass. One night, near the end of her shift, Ellie closed the logbook after acknowledging a particularly subtle entry. The phone remained silent. The lights in the office dimmed slightly. And for the first time, the voicemail did not arrive. Ellie smiled faintly. Perhaps, she thought, her role was complete. Or perhaps the system would simply wait, patiently, until another observer arrived. She shut off the lights, locked the doors, and walked into the quiet city night, leaving the records office exactly as it had been. Calm, patient, and quietly attentive to matters that no one else would ever notice.